Hello, welcome and thank you for joining me today. My name is Adrian and I work as a mobile developer here at Starshot Software. Today, I'll be talking about mobile app framework. Which framework is right for you? Flutter, React Native, or Xamarin? So, when making your first app, it can be difficult. It can be challenging to decide from all the different options that are available for all mobile app framework, and that makes choosing a mobile app framework really hard. It's not easy. There's a lot of information out there that can lead us down to good paths or bad paths. On top of that, there's a lot of considerations outside of the framework that impact us or our app as well, such as these are the things to consider while doing a mobile development. How much time do we have to the market? Like, when is the target date? Or when will the app to be launched or released? What is our current development cost or maintenance cost? Do we have a team of engineers or do we need to hire them? What features do we need? Or how performant is our app need to be? And what are the risks of going third-party solutions? So let's start about using first-party native application. Now, there's a tool created by the creators of iOS and Android, or Apple and Google. Apple makes iOS and makes Xcode development toolkit that allows you to create native iOS app in whether it's Objective-C or Swift. While Google, who makes Android, as an Android studio that allows us to make native Android apps in Java or Kotlin. Now, the benefits of using first-party native application is we get native UI UX. So native UI and native user experience. Button looks like iOS buttons on iOS, while on Android, they look like Android buttons. We can swipe the gesture. They are all baked in. We get that for free. But the one downside is that the development speed is a little slower. Because we have to create the same app twice, Apple and Google use different programming language. There are tool sets, and so we cannot reuse the same code between our apps. So even though our apps look similar, have the same features, we will have to rewrite those apps twice in different code base with two different engineers. That will increase our development code and increase our maintenance costs, and it will slow down our time to the market. The benefits of using a first-party app is because it's a first-party tool, whenever the Apple release a new feature or a new API, it will be there in Xcode the same day. If Google release a new feature or a new API also, it will be available to us in Android Studio. So we never have to worry about falling behind, and we never have to worry about whether or not there will be a support for these tools because they are made by the creators of that operating system. Another type of mobile framework is a progressive web app. Progressive web app is essentially a website that's running locally on our device. With progressive web app, we create the UI just like we would for a website. And there's many different technologies available, from Microsoft, Blazor's native script, or AngularJS. React to Ionic, and the old one is PhoneGap, I think. The tools most developers are already familiar with, especially web developers. Now, the benefits here is you might already have a team of developers that can create your website and can repurpose those skills for a mobile app. The downside of it is the UI UX. progressive web apps UI will have to be spoke on iOS and Android. If we are using the native Xcode or Android Studio toolkits, they come with buttons, navigation tools, and we essentially get those for free. With progressive web app, we need to recreate those tools, those UI elements in our web framework. And so we essentially have to recreate that same look and feel that we would get for free if we're using a native first-party app. One big improvement in using a progressive web app is the development speed. We don't need to write the code multiple times for different platforms, and that also reduces our maintenance costs. But we mark maintenance costs as a medium because we ever need to refresh the UI, because that UI is bespoke. We'll have to write that all ourselves, and so that is one risk, just like with an Apple on iOS 7 made everything flat. In iOS 7, everything changed, and any app created with the web technologies has to rewrite their UI, whereas if we are using a first-party framework, all we need to do is recompile our app to get that native look and feel. Performance is a little bit slower than the native app. It's not that much slower, but in a native app, we're talking about 10 millisecond response time for a button to click, while in the progressive web app, it usually takes 100 milliseconds response time, and it's still below with a threshold that a user would even notice. But if we're creating something that's fast-moving that needs quick response time, like a game, then maybe progressive web apps would not be the best choice in that scenario. This is also fairly a new technology. Now, one of the biggest downside to using a progressive web app is feature access. Progressive web apps cannot access every feature or every API available to us in a mobile app. Now, they do have the capability or the ability to access a lot of features like Bluetooth, local notification, touch gesture, geolocation, camera, device motion, offline storage, and file access. But they don't have access to a lot of features like push notification, battery status, vibration, geofencing, augmented reality, and many more. One big benefit is I can install progressive web app from the website. I can navigate to a website from a browser, tap a home screen, and then the app will appear like a native mobile app. Typically, apps have to be downloaded from the App Store. But in a progressive web app, because they use a web technology, we can download it straight from a website. So this allows us to get new features to our user more quickly and ensures that all of our users stay up to date. Now, we will discuss the cross-platform native apps. I choose this platform because this is the top 3 2020 most famous platform used in the market. So let's start with Xamarin. Now, in Xamarin, not all of you are familiar. Xamarin is a Microsoft cross-platform native solution. We build the apps using Visual Studio, and the programming language is .NET, which are C# or F#. Our UI UX are totally native and has fast development speed because we are writing the app in one language. Unlike the first-party native app, we need to have a knowledge in Java Kotlin or ObjC and Swift. While in Xamarin, we only need to learn C#. So we are writing the app in one language. We don't have to rewrite it like we would have to if we are using first-party native app toolset. And the performance is just like as high and just as fast as if we did it in Xcode or Android Studio. Xamarin is also a mature technology. Unlike the other platforms, it's been around for over a decade, I think. And its features are complete. Meaning every time Apple and Google release an update, Microsoft release the same updates through Visual Studio. And also Xamarin is bought by Microsoft. Now it's an open source platform. Here are the pros of using a Xamarin framework. One of the pros of using a Xamarin framework is that Xamarin apps are known for having almost native-like performance level. Also, Xamarin has the most complete development ecosystem using C#, .NET, and Visual Studio with Xamarin. Or all you need to build mobile apps with Xamarin. Make it one of the most complete cross-platform mobile app development framework out there. Second is, Xamarin Forms allows you to take advantage of standard interface by providing a library of templates so that you can reuse your code across different platforms. You can also use Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android for manual customization if needed. You can access custom renderers and their native APIs in Xamarin. So let's go to the cons. The cons of using Xamarin is that in Xamarin, when you create a build, it will add I think 5 megabytes or 20 megabytes of file size because this is primarily due to that libraries used to translate C# calls into native calls. Second is also that you might need to rewrite some parts of the UI in your app in native code. That means that you will need some knowledge in native programming language like Kotlin or Java or Swift or ObjC to create those custom UI that you wanted. Next, I'll tackle React Native. Well, React Native is made by Facebook. It's also a cross-platform native framework. Similar to Xamarin, Facebook gives us access to every iOS and Android API. So our UI and UX are totally native. We have faster development speed because, again, we only have to write the code once, and it will run on both Android and iOS. Our maintenance is low because we only need to fix a bug once. Our code-based performance is still high. Because these are native apps, we create them in JavaScript. And just like Xamarin, React Native is also a mature language or framework that this open source and it's also future complete. As anytime Apple and Google comes out with updates, Facebook will also release updates via NPM. We will also tackle the pros and cons of using React Native. In React Native, it implements native UI components, allowing apps to look like native apps, therefore providing high-quality user interface. Also, it offers a vast library of UI components, allowing for the faster development time. Also, they have access to native functionality like camera, accelerometer, and also platform-specific codes that allows you to further optimize and separate native apps by using native code. Also, in React Native, they added hot reload that allows developers to apply changes to the apps right away without having to build and recompile all the apps that they are developing. So we're going to cons. Well, in React Native, navigation built in React Native is not seamless and not comparable to the native navigation. Second is that React Native struggles with building complex animations and transitions. I read an article about Airbnb shifting to, because Airbnb is made in React Native, but they decided to shift using the first party native app because I think they have struggles creating a complex animations and transition, and also they take a lot of effort to customize some things in the React Native. So they decided to choose the native route instead. The last tool that I will discuss is Flutter. Flutter is a Google cross-platform native solution. Flutter is kinda pretty new. Now, Flutter is different from Xamarin and React Native in a way. And that is Flutter does not use native UI UX API provided by Apple and Google. Flutter uses a bespoke method to draw their own UI on the screen. Now, there is a benefit to that because it's faster. But one downside is that whenever iOS and Android come up with a new UI update, Flutter needs to come out with their new library to mimic those updates as well. Like Xamarin and Android, it is also feature complete and also release their updates via NPM. It has very fast, high-performance app and all created in Dart. Now, Dart is a new programming language created by Google. Not that many developers are already familiar with it, but it has many similarities to Java and C#. And so a lot of those developers will take to Dart very quickly. Flutter is kinda new, just released within the last year or two, and it also is an open source. These are the benchmark for Flutter. Now, the pros of using Flutter is that Flutter offers APIs pre-built, widgets, and also CLI tools, and pretty much all the tools needed for cross-platform app development. While it offers an extensive library or pre-built widgets, you can also create your own customized pre-existing ones. And also reliability, developed and supported by Google. So you don't need to worry about support because it's made by Google. Also, same as React Native, it also has a hot reload and allows developers to fix bugs faster through faster code implementation. Then it's also an open source platform. While the cons of it is it's similar to Xamarin, it produces large app size, and Flutter apps can be quite large compared to other frameworks that can force developers to reduce the number of libraries and packages used to compress image and even steer away using animation altogether in favor of reducing their app size. While also, Flutter doesn't expose many native APIs for you to use. That's why for many purposes, you will need third-party packages, which also means that you will have to depend on the ecosystem itself. In conclusion, which mobile app framework works the best for you? For me, it's the one that's best for your team. Every team is going to have a different scenario. Every team is going to have different capabilities, and as long as we understand the trade-offs between native first-party, progressive web apps, and cross-platform framework, we can ensure that we choose the best mobile framework from our team. Thank you. Do you have any question about my presentation? Okay. Yes. What's your question? Question from the audience is that for a person starting out in the world of programming, which framework do you recommend most? Actually, it's hard to ship directly to a cross-platform without knowing the native application. You need background for it, but it depends on your specialty when it comes to a programming language. Say for example, you know creating web application, then I suggest you use React Native since it's using JavaScript. While if you're lean into Java programming language, I will recommend using Xamarin because Java is using C# as a language. It's very similar type like Java. So the transition from Java to C# won't be a problem. Also, Xamarin is very similar when creating a first-party application, first-party app. It's like similar to using creating it in Xcode or creating it in Android Studio. One question from a client is from Sebastian. Hi, Sebastian. His question is, in which case do you recommend using Xamarin native and in which case using Xamarin Form? Mostly, I recommend using Xamarin native when the app is complicated or not. Because, like for example, if you're targeting creating a game, which is more directionally going to because it will depend if how much custom UI will you make on an app. Say for example, I would use Xamarin Forms if for business application because you will utilize more the cross-platform type, and also you can share UI for both. And I will use native application, Xamarin native. If you're not familiar, Xamarin Forms and Xamarin native. Xamarin Forms is shared code between UI and business logic, while Xamarin native is only you are sharing the business logic. For Xamarin native, I will recommend it if you are targeting more in terms of performance, because in my experience, Xamarin native has better performance in Xamarin Forms in terms of optimization. But the downside of using Xamarin native is that you will have to create the UI twice. So it also depends on the development cost of the client. So if the client prefers to have a more optimized and more clean look and feel, I mean native look and feel, I will recommend Xamarin native. While in Xamarin Forms, in the process, they are Microsoft still enhancing the Xamarin Forms so that it will be in Xamarin Forms. I noticed some delays in terms of navigation, and in Android it does not follow the right navigation platform in Android. Unlike when you use Xamarin native, it's like just using a first-party native application. That the good part is that you are sharing the business logic. In my experience, to be honest, I have very little knowledge about Ionic, but in terms of performance, I think Ionic has some delays because it's like the same as because when we start using cross-platform, we started using PhoneGap, and we noticed that there's delay in when you tap a button. It's not that yet responsive. Unlike if you compare Ionic application and a native application, you will see the performance difference between the two. So I think Ionic will be better if it's for fast prototyping or some simple application. And also if you have already a web existing application, it will be easily converted to Ionic application. But I don't recommend Ionic to a high-scale application or a very complicated app. Thank you, Joel, for that question also. Another question here is that, according to your experience as a developer, do you think it's better to outsource the software or do in-house development? Well, it depends on if you have the engineers to work on in the in-house. I think it's much better to do it in-house. But if you need to train them, if you don't have the resources, the programmers to do that, I think it's much better to outsource the software. Thank you, Yasmin, for that question. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you for your time for attending this our first webinar, and hope to see you again to our next webinar. Thank you and have a great day ahead.